negotiations between Hamas and Israel. The negotiations were held by two main mediators, Qatar and Egypt, along with the United States. They were holding indirect talks between Israeli officials and Hamas's leaders here in Qatar, who would alternate in their visits between Doha and the Egyptian capital, Cairo. On Tuesday, Israel decided to attack these delegations here inside the Qatari state at its capital. What has been seen as a massive violation to international law has been described as a blatant attack by Israel against the sovereignty of the state of Qatar. GCC countries rushed to condemn these attacks strictly. The Arab League rushed, and many regional powers like Turkey and Iran also condemned these attacks. So what has happened exactly? What we know is that an Israeli airstrike took place, and the plan has been in preparation for months, meaning that Israel was in negotiations with Hamas leaders while intending to finalize a plan that aims to kill its leaders here in Qatar. Yesterday, Tuesday afternoon, the Israeli Air Force struck a residential area known to be the residence for Hamas's leader, the timing of which was clearly selected to be a meeting between Hamas's top leaders here in Qatar to discuss a U.S. proposal on a ceasefire. Earlier, President Donald Trump proposed a new deal to broker a ceasefire, ordering Hamas to release all remaining 48 hostages. In return, about up to 3,000 Palestinians would be released. The withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza will be guaranteed, and many more articles were in negotiations. Hamas initially sounded its acceptance to that agreement, but the leaders here were meeting to finalize exactly the terms of that agreement. It appears that the negotiations were so close to an agreement that President Donald Trump himself said that the negotiations are going so well and that an agreement could be imminent. That was just a few days ago. But while that happens, Israel decides to strike that meeting where Hamas leaders would be discussing the terms and see how they would phrase the terms of their acceptance to the ceasefire agreement. The airstrike, however, did not kill any of the Hamas leaders. Instead, 5 were killed, including 2 sons of Hamas leaders, including the son of Khalil al-Hayya, the chief of the Hamas political bureau living here in Qatar, and also a Qatari citizen, a security personnel who was at the house protecting it, was also killed because of these attacks. Now that has taken the entire world by surprise, and no one was expecting that Israel would attack a sovereign state that is not in any form of animosity or rivalry between Israel and Qatar. Israel has attacked many countries in the region during the past 2 years, all of which have tension and rivalry between them, like Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Palestinian occupied territories, of course, and Iraq. But Qatar, that was not foreseen. And it was always believed that Hamas leaders in this Arab Gulf state would have the protection so that political efforts can resume and negotiations would be in place. The attack definitely has a massive impact on the ceasefire agreement. It collapsed trust that Hamas would have that Israel can guarantee or at least wants any form of agreement. If they wanted an agreement, such attack should not have taken place. Instead, it seems that while an agreement was so close, Israel decided to take these attacks itself. This is the general feel here that many politicians have been voicing. The Qatari Prime Minister was furious during a press conference he held yesterday. He described Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, to have savage attacks and savage political approaches to the region. He said that Netanyahu does not want any agreement and that these attacks are a clear indication that he has been trying tirelessly to push all routes that would lead to an agreement to failure. The Qatari Prime Minister also said that Qatar is and preserves its right for self-defense and to respond in the appropriate time and by the appropriate means against these attacks on its territory. Meanwhile, across the region, rejection from all Arab states was evident. Countries like Kuwait, UAE and Saudi Arabia rushed immediately to defend their GCC sister and Arab sister nation Qatar. Countries like Egypt, Jordan, and many more also took the same strict stance. Egypt, for instance, called for an intervention by the international community to stop the growing aggressions by Israel on many states in this region. It started with a war on Gaza and it expanded to include from Iraq to Yemen and all the way to Iran when tension peaked a few months back. Now, what has been the response from a country like Algeria, for instance, as a permanent member at the Security Council this year? Algeria decided to call for an emergency UN Security Council meeting that will be held later today, Wednesday. Meanwhile, there are a massive cooperation and collaborations between the Arab world to try to find a unanimous way to respond to these attacks. A statement by the Arab League and foreign ministers that has released an announcement a few hours ago saying that they strictly condemn by all terms possible the attacks by Israel on the state of Qatar. Meanwhile, there has been no word from those who have been targeted. Hamas said that its leaders are safe, but people like Khalil, al-Hayya, who was targeted in these attacks, has not come out to the media to speak yet. So more will be revealed once this happens. There are many questions about the logistical implementation of these attacks. It clearly shows some sophistication from the Israeli air defense or air forces to come to Qatar and strike with missiles, while at the same time they have not been detected by the Qatari air defense systems, which during an attack by Iran on a US military base here in Qatar were quite effective. Qatar is the host of one of the biggest military camps, military headquarters for the United States in the region. And Al Udeid is quite popular for being a headquarters for that, and it's also a foundation for a strong ties between Qatar and the United States. A few months back, President Donald Trump has become the first US president ever to visit the state of Qatar, part of his Gulf Cooperation Council tour that included the UAE and Saudi Arabia. There seems to be no prior notification by the United States to Qatar. The Prime Minister of Qatar said that they've only learned about the event once the missiles struck the building that included Hamas's personnel and targeted their meeting. Before that, no one gave Qatar any warning. They received, like few minutes later, a call from the White House indicating that Israel has informed them after as well the attack. That has been what was told by the Qatari Prime Minister regarding the attacks and the circulating information that the White House was informed prior to that attack. Meanwhile, also a few minutes after the attack took place on Tuesday, the US Embassy in Qatar says that it has learned about the events as they unfolded, and it instructed all its citizens to take shelter in their location, not to move, not to go out until the issue clears out. Now, the future of the negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian Hamas armed resistance group is not clear. Trust definitely has collapsed between them. Earlier, while negotiations were also being underway, Israel has killed the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, while he was in Iran. So the continuation of which only shows that Israel is adamant to continue its war. It has given clear instructions on Tuesday morning to clear out Gaza City, ordering about 1 million citizens to move away from the Palestinian enclave. But despite these tensions and despite these attacks on its territory, Qatar still says it is willing and will continue to play its continued role to mediate between foes. It will continue to mediate between the Palestinians and Israelis once the time is fit for these talks to resume. But at the same time, it will keep chasing all its actions, all its rights to defend itself on all international arenas. The Prime Minister of Qatar warned against these continued Israeli policies, actually accusing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he's doing that for his own interest, to protect his own ambition and to avoid local court accusations of corruption filed against him. So elongating the war has been one of the main reasons many Arab leaders believe is why this war against Gaza has been stretching for so long. The participation and the awareness of the United States, of course, is under question, even though the White House denied that it had prior information, but it is quite accustomed for Israel to take consult, or at least to inform the White House and the US government before taking any major attacks outside the territories of its own and the occupied territories. When it comes to other countries, that has been quite clear when the attacks against Iran took place, and now it seems that Qatar, according to circulating information denied by the White House, that also took place before the attack. Finally, the Palestinians in Gaza remain to be in dire humanitarian conditions, deteriorating, and people are dying. Children, women, men, everyone is suffering from hunger, from disease, as the lack of a ceasefire agreement leads to an extreme slowdown in the flow of aid trucks that supply medicine, supplies food, and all other necessities to the Palestinian enclave. On the ground, the cost of anything available has increased tremendously, making it very hard for most people to afford to buy or purchase their basic needs. And at the same time, the United Nations also condemned the Israeli attacks on Qatar, is warning against the elongation of that process of the ongoing war against the Palestinians, the civilians, over 2 million civilians out there that have been crying for help by the international community for so long, to intervene in the Israeli attacks and put a final end to it. Meanwhile, the criticism to the Israeli attacks on Qatar has not only been limited to the Middle East, but many other European countries, international powers, and in Asia and in the Americas and beyond have criticized these attacks. No one wants to see another sovereign country's territory being violated by attacks that aim to stop any possible progress for peace and security. All of this comes ahead of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and these will be definitely among the top topics to be discussed, starting in today's Emergency UN Security Council to discuss the situation in Qatar, and moving forward to the Palestinian crisis in general, which Arabs in this part of the world believe is the main reason for all the tension in the Middle East. Well, many leaders here say that once resolved, the Palestinian crisis has reached a two-state solution, putting permanent peace and giving Palestinians hope of having their own territory. The rest of the tension in the region will gradually diffuse. This is Adel El Mahrouky reporting to you from the Qatari capital of Doha. Thank you.